Up until now, we've been working on a local development site, and that's great, except when it comes time to deploy this, we need a way to pick it up and move it over to your production site. Now remember, as I showed you before in previous videos, some of the work that we've done lives in the file system, and some of it is stored in the WordPress database. So how do we get all that back into a single theme package that we can move around and install on other sites? That is what we're going to be covering today. Before we package this thing up, there's a few things that we need to do. First of all, we need to add a readme.txt file, and then we also need to add a screenshot to the theme. So let's take care of the readme.txt first. Here we're back in VS Code again, and I've got my theme folder, BTFS demo, and right in there, I'm going to just create a readme.txt file. And this readme.txt file needs to be formatted a very specific way. So if you go over to the WordPress developer site, you'll see some documentation on that. I'll also drop a link to that in the video description. On that developer site, we can click on this link right here for the readme.txt file, and it gives us a little bit more developer information. If we scroll to the bottom of that, you can find the WordPress plugin README file standard. I'll click on this in a second, but once you've created your README file, you can also run it through this README validator to make sure that everything is correct. So this is the README file standard, and there's a whole lot of stuff in here, but it's basically saying that we need to have certain information in the header, and the header formatted a certain way, description, frequently asked questions, screenshots, changelog, as well as some other things like license. Don't be too intimidated by this. It doesn't need to be as complex as what you see in this example. I'm just going to come over here to VS Code and paste in a readme.txt file that I've created for this theme. So here we have a much simpler version of the readme.txt file. If you take a look here, the header has a lot of the same information as we have in our style.css file. Let's just pop that open so that we can see. A lot of it is the same. So we've got the version, the requires at least, license stuff is all going to be the same, tested up to the same, contributors very similar. So this should all be pretty self-explanatory. Same thing for description, just put in a description of the theme. Changelog, this is going to be the changelog for the theme. Really, the purpose of this readme.txt is to have documentation for the theme. And then down below, we've got this copyright information. I don't think this is required, but as we see later, one of the ways that we can export the theme will automatically put this copyright in for us. So with this readme.txt file in there, we have one of two things down. Next thing we need to do is just generate the screenshot. So to generate that screenshot, I'm just going to pop open here our homepage, and we're going to open this up in an incognito window, and we'll open up developer tools, and the screenshot.ping needs to be 1200 by 900 pixels. So I just put that here in my responsive dimensions, click on my three dots and say capture screenshot, and then I'm just going to save this as screenshot.ping inside of that theme directory. So now, when I come back over to our demo site and look in the themes, I have a screenshot for the theme. The next two things that I'm going to do aren't necessary to distribute the theme. They're just for demonstration purposes only. So first of all, I'm going to come over here to the editor and just open up one of our templates so that I can come into styles, colors, and I want to give a color to my headings. So I'm just going to make those our primary theme color, and I'll save this. Next thing I'm going to do is come back to VS Code, and we're going to open up that theme.json file. And all the way at the bottom, if you remember correctly, I created this template parts and I said, don't worry, I'll explain it later. Well, this is the lesson where I'm going to explain it. So to explain it, I'm actually going to remove this so that you can see what happens when we don't have it, and then we can put it back in later. And just to show you that nothing has really changed on the front end other than the fact that we have colored headings now, I'll open up one of these templates. And we'll expand that, and you'll still see that even though I don't have those lines in theme.json, we still have friendly names for our general header and general footer, and for our query loop. So now that we have all that done, let's go ahead and start moving that theme over to our production site. So to get the theme out of here, again, remember we've got some stuff in the file system, some stuff in the database. We need to merge all that together into one theme file. Luckily, the site editor has a great feature where all we need to do is click on these three dots and hit export. Keep in mind, this won't work if you're in the regular block editor where you're editing a post or a page. It only works when you're in the site editor. So we can click on this export and it will automatically create a zip file of everything for us. So I'm just going to save that on my file system and open it up for you. And now when we come into it, we can see that it's already picked up the stuff that we put in there manually. But in addition to that, it's created files for our template parts. And it's created all of our template files. And each of these template files has the WordPress markup code in it. So if you remember correctly, our original folder had our styles and templates only. And then in that template, we only had a blank index.html file. But now that export folder has all the stuff that we need. So let's come back over here. So I'm just going to delete that extracted folder. And then I'm going to switch over to our production site. Now this BTFS production site, I created the same way that I did our development site. The only difference here is the name. However, if you look at it, we don't have the theme loaded on there. So once I install this theme, I should get something very similar to what we had on the original development site. So let's do that right now. I'll say add new theme, upload, and we'll just drag this guy right on there, install, and activate. So far so good, right? The theme installed and activated correctly. I've got a screenshot. I've got all my metadata information in there. Let's take a look on the front end. Here's where we're running into some problems. So first of all, we don't have a header. We also don't have a site icon. So let's go into the site editor and see what's happening. Right away, we can see a few things. We can see that the navigation menu has been deleted or is unavailable. And that makes sense because we didn't have a way to export the navigation menu from our original development site to this new one. Second thing, we don't have our logo. And we also don't have the site icon because those are going to be specific to this site. And this is one of the challenges that we have with the way that block themes work, in that all the settings are done contextually instead of through the customizer, the way that classic themes are done. But we'll take a peek at all the other things. Our templates, we can see that we have all of our templates here. They're named correctly. Navigation, we can see that we only have social menu. We don't have the main menu like we did on the other. Our styles came over. Our pages should all be there. Our templates were all there. Patterns, we don't have our header and footer patterns, but when I click on general, you'll now see that I've got general footer 2, general header, and query loop. They've all been shoved into general instead of having them in the correct categories of header and footer. So there's definitely a few things that we need to clean up here. Since we're already here in the patterns menu, let's take care of this first. And I bet you already know where this is going. So obviously, instead of these patterns having our friendly names and being in the right categories, they just have the slugs, which is the file name. So you remember that section that we've removed from theme.json earlier? Well, that is actually the thing that gives it the friendly names and tells it what category to use. So we're going to come back here into theme.json. We're going to add our template parts section back in. And now we will run another export from our development site to the production site. Yes, I could have made that change on the production site, but then we'd have to repackage it again. So we're going to make all of our changes on the development site. Yes, it's another step, but it's going to save us some heartache in the long run. Now, since I made a change to this, I also want to update our version. So I'm going to come into style.css, and I'm just going to change this to version 0.0.2, and that's going to help me keep track of what's going on. I can also open up our readme.txt file to say 0.0.2, modified theme.json to add template parts. And that way we've got everything up to date. Now I'm going to switch back to my development site, and we're always going to make these changes on the development site and then export them from development over to production. So back on that development site, I'm just going to come back into the site editor and say export. And I'm just going to name this BTFS demo underscore 0.0.2. Save that guy. Now we'll come back to production, add new theme, upload, grab that theme that we just exported, and drag and drop it on there and install and activate. Now when I come in to look at my themes, you're going to see something interesting. You'll see that I've got the theme that I just activated, version 0.0.2, but I also have another one here with version 0.0.1. So why do you think that is? So let's take a look at our themes folder, and here you'll see that we've got BTFS demo, which is the original one that we exported, but now we also have BTFS demo underscore 0.0.2. So what it's doing is it's taking our zip file name and creating a folder from that. Not really an ideal solution, but this is part of the way that the site editor export works, and the reason why I like the next way that we're going to do it a little bit better. But let's go ahead and ignore this for right now, and we'll keep going. So we'll verify, yes, I do have 0.0.2 activated. We're going to come back into our editor and we'll take a look at our patterns. And now you can see that our template parts look the way they're supposed to again. We've got our header with our general header. It's got the friendly name and it's in the right location. Same thing with footer. The location footer has our general footer part in there. And then our general location has the query loop part in there. They're all named correctly. They're no longer named just like the slugs are because we've defined it in theme.json. The next thing that I want to do is start addressing this header. Now I could open it as a template part, but then I wouldn't see everything in context. So for me, it's easier to open it up as a template. So I'm just going to open up our front page template, expand our list view, and now we can see our header and our footer. So I'll open this guy up, and I'm just going to start with the easy thing, our site logo, and we will pop a site logo in. We don't have a logo or site icon in the media library yet, so I'm just going to grab those from my file system and drag them in here. And I'm going to just add some alt text for us. And I will select this for my logo. And then again, if I expand my settings, we'll find that link that we need to be able to change the site icon. But I want to make sure that I save this before I do that. So let's save. And then I can open this up. It's going to open up our classic customizer. And here I can select my icon. Publish. And then we'll go back to the site editor. So far, so good. We have our logo and our site icon taken care of, but we still have this issue of the navigation menu. Now, there are a couple ways we can handle this. We could come in and say, create a new menu, and then add one in here inside the site editor, or we can fix it on the export file, which is frankly the way that I prefer doing it. That way, we don't have to address this problem each time we use that theme on different sites. So here I am in the folder with my export files, and this is the one we're going to play with, BTFS demo 002. Let's just extract this, and I want to rename this folder to 0.0.3. Here in the folder, I'm going to update my style.css so that it is 003. And then I want to come into my template part for my general header, because in here is where we see the problem. It has a reference to the post ID for that header. And since that post ID doesn't exist on any site except the development site, we get the error. So let's just remove this whole thing about reference, save, come back to our file system, and I'm going to zip all these up the same way that the export is doing right now, which is the incorrect way. So please, what I'm doing right now, don't do this on your own sites. So I'm just going to zip all the files themselves up into a file called BTFS demo 003. Move that zip file back here with the rest of them. And I guess because I did this the wrong way, I should explain the right way. The right thing to do would be to have a zip file named whatever you want to call it. But then inside the zip file would be a folder name with the slug for your theme. So this folder, instead of being BTFS demo 003, would just be BTFS-demo. And then we could name the zip file whatever the heck we wanted, so that when it installed correctly, that folder went into the right place. But again, that's not the way that the site editor's export function works. It is the way that the Create Blocks theme export works, and we'll get to that in a later part of this video. For now, let's install this 003 version of our theme and see what happens. So once again, I'm going to upload that theme, and we will just drag and drop that guy in and install and activate. And again, it created yet another theme folder, and we'll verify that. Yes, version 003. And now that I think of it, I probably should have put a changelog in there. Just didn't even think about it. And now that we're here in the site editor, you'll see that we no longer have an error for our navigation menu. It's just grabbed the first navigation menu that we have and plopped it in there. So let's pop open one of these templates and take a closer look. And you can see navigation, it's just grabbed what we have in there, which is our social menu. If you're wondering what these two drafts are, these are from when I was doing it before and I kept on clicking on there and saying, create new menu, but I never saved the menus. That's what these drafts are. But it grabbed the social menu, which is one that exists. And that is pretty much what I would want to do on a new site once I install this. I would want to take the main navigation menu or the first navigation menu in there and use it. That way I can always come in and change it later on, but I don't have that ugly error. So that's one thing that we'll need to do each time we export this thing before we put it into actual production. And that's definitely one of the failings of both methods, whether we're doing the export from directly from the site editor or whether we're using the Create Block themes. Now, if you're wondering why I went through that exercise in the beginning to, number one, remove the template parts, you know why that is. But I also, if you remember correctly, added a color to the headings. And that really is just because I wanted to show you, if we take a look in styles, I wanted to show you that the styles that we put in here that lived in the database in the development server still exported and came over to the theme. Even though everything else we had manually put into theme.json, that's something that we had only living in the database came over. And as you can see, it does. All right, so we've done this one way. We've used the built-in site editor way of exporting the theme. Now let's go ahead and use the way that I prefer doing it. and that will be using the Create Blocks theme plugin. So before we switch over to that, let's just come over here to our themes. And I'm actually going to reset this demo just a little bit. I will come over and activate my 2024 theme, and let's get rid of these guys. And it's complaining, saying that the theme doesn't exist, but we're just going to come in here and to the file system and remove them manually. And now when I refresh, we're good to go. And if we look on the front end, only thing that we have going on here is that we still have the logo and our site icon. And as a matter of fact, I even want to get rid of our navigation menus. So let's get rid of these draft navigation menus. We'll get rid of this one. Goodbye. All right, so now we're more or less set up, aside from the logo and the site icon. No reason to go through all that exercise again. Anyway, this is the 2024 theme. I don't care what happens there. What I do care about is going back to our development site, because here is where we want to install that Create Block theme plugin. So plugins, add new, Create Block theme, install and activate. So this Create Block theme plugin is developed by the WordPress team. It's very well supported, but it does still have some issues here and there. So let's take a look. If we come into Appearance, we'll now see that we've got these two new items in here, the Create Block theme, as well as Manage Theme Fonts. I covered this a little bit in one of our first videos. And what we want to focus on now is just looking here at Create Block theme. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because for exporting a block theme, there's two ways to do it. And they both have slightly different functionalities, which is really strange. If you look in the GitHub issues page, there's actually a discussion right now talking about whether they should get rid of this export theme here from the classic admin menu and just have a note to say, do it from the site editor. Because the preferred way of exporting your theme is going to be from the site editor. However, if we were to do it here from the classic editor, we would do export BTFS demo, generate, and it just spits out a zip file. Very similar to what we did when we did it inside the site editor before. This is not what we want though. But since I just hit that export button, let's go ahead and save this so that I can show you the difference. So if you remember correctly, when we did the generic site editor export, inside of our zip file, we just had the files for the theme. However, if we take a look at the one that the Create Blocks theme does, it has a folder in there with the slug for the theme. And this is the correct way of packaging a theme. So now because it has the folder in there, it does not matter what the name of my zip file is. It's always going to put it in the right place. But like I said, this is not how we want to do the export. We actually want to come in here to the editor, to our site editor, and we'll just open something up here. And now we've got this wrench icon. This is our Create Block themes icon. And from here, we can do a bunch of stuff. So one of the coolest things that we can do is hit this theme info button, and this will let us actually add some more metadata to it. So here I can add a theme description to it. I can change my version, which is great. So I had 003 before. I'm going to just do 004. Theme tags, I can put in recommended plugins. That's very helpful. If I wanted to do a theme subfolder, I could do one there, but I don't. I do want to put in a theme URI, so let's just pop that in too. But I cannot change the theme name. So let's hit update, and yes. And now when I come in here and do export zip, it will do a very similar thing. It will bake all of our changes in that are in the database and put them into one big zip file. So I'm going to save this as BTFS demo 004. And when we look at it, again, we've got the folder inside of there, and we've got all the right stuff. Our style.css has also incremented the version number. And our templates and parts and everything else are just the way we want them. So in order to take this theme and install it, all I need to do is unzip it, fix that menu line in the header, rezip it, and install it. But before we do that, let's take a look at something. Because I want to switch back over. This is our theme folder, and this comes back to before when we first created this, we only had that blank index.html, and all the rest of the stuff lives in the database. Well, this is one of the really nice functions of the Create Blocks theme plugin, is that now I can come in here and say save changes. So check this out. That saved all those changes into the folder. So it baked all that stuff in directly to the file system without having to do, export everything to a zip file and then re-import it and do all that. It just baked everything in for me. And now none of those changes live in the database. So this is actually why I like using this plugin, because I can come in here and I can say save changes. And then before I export my zip file, I can do what I want to do. I can edit my Readme file. I can edit my templates. I can do all of that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So here I'm just updating my readme.txt file, and we'll save that. I'll come into parts and we'll edit my header just to take out that reference. Cool. And then I will do export zip. And I'm going to save this as BTFS demo 004, since this is the one that I really want to use. Yes, I want to overwrite that. So now when I look inside of here, it's got the readme text that I just modified. And our header is also the one that I just modified. Because none of those changes live in the database, they're all in the file system. There weren't any differences between the database and the file system, so all the plugin needed to do was zip it up for us. So now that we have all that here, let's come over to our production site, appearance, themes, add new theme, upload. Grab that and drag her on there, install, and activate. There it is. Just to make sure that everything looks right, let's take a look in our themes directory. And now you can see right there, we've got BTFS demo. That is correct. Our files are correct in there. It no longer is named with the name of the zip file. It is just named with the slug that's inside of that zip file. So now this thing is installed and activated. Let's jump into our editor and take a look. And excellent, everything looks good. I can see that I have a menu. I can see that it's pulled over the logo and the site icon. And since I really don't want this social menu here, I can just come right in. And this is a weird thing. I don't know why this is. When I jump into the site editor and then try to edit the front page, it opens up the page instead of the template. So let's just come in here and do front page. That way it opens up the template instead of the page. And now I can see my header and my footer. And navigation, I want to do a new nav menu. And I want to call this something different. Main nav menu. And for my blocks, I want to do page list. Again, I really dislike the menu system that's here in the block editor. I think it has a long way to go. In real life, I would probably use something like Max Mega Menu. It's so much more flexible, it's accessible, and it gives us so many more options than what we have here with the core Gutenberg navigation block. This is the website for Max Mega Menu. Definitely try it out. The free version is very good. The paid version is even better. It is well worth every penny. The other option is to build your own, and I've used alpine.js to create my own nav menu block. It also works fine, but if you don't want to go through that hassle, and believe me, it is quite the hassle, Max Mega Menu, definitely the way to go. So we've done everything. Let's just pop out of here and take a look at it on the front end. And there we have it. Our theme very nicely came over from development to production. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video is how to get it from development to production. In the next video, we're going to create a child theme. So what that lets us do is it's going to let us customize this theme for each individual site. That will allow us to have a single base theme that has all of our agency standard stuff in it, but then we can take that and give it to all of our clients and customize it for them individually while still having that base theme as the standard. That way, any changes that we need to make, any bugs that we need to fix, anything like that can always be done to that core theme and distributed everywhere without affecting all of our client sites. So that's what we have coming up. And in there, we're going to create some functions. We're going to do some extra styling, and we might even make this site start to look like something. It'll still be ugly, don't get me wrong, but it'll start to look like something. So again, thank you, and I will see you in the next part.